Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Casey Gromer, who left a corporate career in marketing to find her calling to help female founders with her fractional integrator agency, and Vanessa Laughlin, who started a business to support individuals on their very worst of days and has grown that to become a resource to help enterprise organizations as an employer benefit. Today's episode is brought to you by my company, Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com, or feel free to just email me directly at hannah@claracfo.com. So I met today's guest through Amy DeMoss of AD & Co. And AV runs a full-service creative marketing agency with a focus on fashion, beauty, and in the wellness industries. So if you want to learn more about Amy's company, you can go and visit AD & Company, all spelled out, adandcompany.com. Today's guest is Mallory Ulaszek. Mallory is the co-founder of Week of the Website, a website design agency, and a managing partner of World of the Website, an enterprise software development agency. She has served as the lead for marketing, finance, sales, and operations teams. Prior to Week of the Website, Mallory tackled everything from large-scale event production to fundraising strategy for nonprofits to owning multiple retail stores in the Chicagoland area. Mallory, thank you for being on Financial Clarity.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to chat today, and but I did not know that you had a background in retail. So I would like to know the little story from owning
Yeah.
retail to owning a business that creates websites. What happened there?
It's like it's interesting. I have a very interesting, very storied and diverse background in work. But so I started my retail stores right around the pandemic, not the pandemic. Oh no, the other big thing that we did, the recession
Oh, okay.
in 2009. So right before that, I had graduated 2 years prior from college. I was in B2B sales with AT&T, hated it, and moved over to being an entrepreneur right away, right when things were getting a little bit dicey in the workplace. But so I started a retail store just because it was a passion of mine. I always loved the fashion industry, but I wanted to do something that had a little bit more substance to it, something that would be a little bit more challenging. And if you want a challenge, you do retail.
Yes.
And so I kind of came to that through uh, like leaving my last job, my prior job, saving up as much money as I could to kind of float me prior to that. And then kind of being in this place where I was interviewing for a lot of marketing jobs. I was trying to get into um, sort of the creative side of business work, and it just was not panning out. I could not get a job, and it was when the recession was starting, and I was like, well, I'm just going to start my own retail store, which seems really ridiculous, but because of the times, it made a lot of folks more amenable to taking a chance on someone very new who
Oh,
was 24 years old. So what I mean by that is I was able to get uh, um, like a retail lease a lot easier than I would have were it today,
yeah.
because people were looking to fill spaces. It was easier for me to find clothing vendors because they were more willing to take a chance on someone new versus needing to have like years and referrals and all of that stuff. So it actually, while it's always really tough to be employed during a recession, if you're smart, you can find your foot in the door. And I didn't have a ton of money to start. I wanted to sort of inch my way up, and so I didn't do a ton of work to the space itself. I got really lucky when I found a couple of vendors. I had a small amount of capital to get started and get the initial stock in the door. because that's the thing about a retail store is that the overhead is astronomical and your
Yeah.
cogs are through the roof. And managing that cash flow just became, I did this for 5 years. It just became so much
Yeah.
because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars going in and out the door every month. Like
Hmm.
it was an adventure. I got really good at making sure everything was getting paid and finding the wiggle room where I needed to. But yeah, I started out in retail. I grew to two stores at my maximum, and then I ended up combining those two stores into one in downtown Chicago again. So um, I had those for about 6 years before I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And a
Yeah.
lot of that reason was because I wasn't in love with what I was doing anymore, combined with the fact that retail is such a seasonal beast and it just became very difficult to like dig deep. It is. I
Yeah.
have friends who still own stores and I'm like, it's the biggest hustle I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I started that, I did that, I got out of it, and I realized at the end of that that I didn't want to do anything with as much overhead. And so I was just going back into this idea of like, okay, I was really wanting to get into marketing, more of the creative side of business, but I have this now. I almost got like baptized by fire with my financial education through retail. I
Yeah.
got really good at mapping out cash flows. I got really good at mapping out our buying structure and seasonality. And I knew that I just didn't want to do it anymore on my own. That was
Mhm.
number one. The stress is astronomical when you're carrying the weight of it 100%. And also, I just wanted to start a business that was more service based. Um, and I wanted to go more digital because at that time, this is now 2014, and the internet is where the best and most work is. So we actually didn't have, when I approached Kelsey for working together, there was no real idea. I just sort of approached her in a manner of fact and saying, I like you. I think you have a lot of the, and we were just like, we were close friends at that point, but she had a lot of the complementary skills that I had. So what I couldn't do, she knew how to do. She really knew the digital marketing world. She at that time had been building websites for a restaurant group in Chicago.
Mhm.
And it ended up happening where all at once I ended up shuttering my store, and then we ended up putting our name into a couple of uh, proposals that were out there. And we ended up getting two jobs off the bat, and one was website design and one was production. And that is what
Mhm.
formed and like directed the way that our company was. So we ended up doing a bunch of things at once, and that's how the website stuff started.
Yeah.
So we actually were doing events for a while before we started focusing full time on
Oh,
websites too.
okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of that background comes into.
Yeah.
But that's just because those are the first jobs we got as a
Yeah.
twosome, and we decided that we would just like dig in there, and
Yeah.
that is how we started.
See what it is. Yeah, I mean, I love the origin stories of service businesses because it's usually like y you just kind of start doing something first, and
Yeah.
then you sort of start to figure out, well, this is the type of thing I maybe like doing, or maybe I see opportunity here, or I see their greater need here versus here, or I mean, why did you not go with events versus the
Oh my
website side?
God.
I'm curious.
Oh, because
I mean,
there's no
I
money
could
in
have
it.
some
There's no
ideas.
money. Yeah. There's no flat out. There's no money in it. We laugh and we would say it's a young woman's job. And at the time we stopped doing it, I think I was like 36. I
Right.
was like, I'm good. But it's a lot. It's the coordination level. But that is where Kelsey and I really picked up this like appreciation for organization and project management. We were, when you're planning multi-day events all over the city and you have speakers and hosts and all of these things that you need to wrangle, you get really, really good at managing chaos.
Yeah.
And it really did inform how we built our process with Week of the Website, because kind of to what you were just saying, we just started building websites together. At the time, like I had no background in that, and I was doing more of the production stuff because Kelsey brought the development skill. And at this point, Week of the Website wasn't really in existence. We were called Presence Agency. We were just a digital and in-person marketing agency.
Hmm.
Um, so we started building websites, and we were doing it together, and we would look at the systems and think about our clients and look at the platform we were using, which is Squarespace, and it's still Squarespace. And we're like, yeah, Kelsey and I are two people who are like, there's a better way. There's a better way.
Hmm.
And we were frustrated by the way that there was a lack of transparency in the web design industry, that there was a lack, and we'd experienced that on both sides of the coin, not just as the people who were building it, but the people who were also the clients of it. Because with my retail stores, I had e-commerce websites. And I was always like, where's my money going? And why does this look like crap? Like it was not, it was not, it was really frustrating to just feel like you were throwing money into the void and not really understanding the value or the work that was coming out of it. And at that time, the web industry was a little bit even more opaque than it is now. You just had like a lot of like checks and balances you were going through other people. They were just kind of doing it for you. And so from the client perspective, you didn't have as much skin in the game. And so with Week of the Website, we kind of thought about it in a couple ways. We're like, first of all, the timeline of this could be condensed if people were just almost held captive for a week, where we were asking them to engage with us on a consistent basis so that they were mentally in. They didn't have to, like, what we were noticing is when we were building websites, we're like, oh, it was like a lot like picking up the ball, throwing it around, and then setting it back down. And then the next time you would come and you'd have to pick up the ball, then you'd have to like
Yes.
try to remember the
Yep.
order in which you were throwing that ball in and then add to it. And so it was just like two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. Projects were dragging on. It wasn't very economical. There's a fantastic thing called scopes creep in the industry, which is really difficult to manage sometimes. And that's when we started taking a really hard look at the way in which websites were being developed traditionally and decided to start doing it differently. That is when we came up with Week of the Website. Um, so, just out of
Yeah.
a fact of our own pure frustration and being like, there's definitely a better way. And that's when we started getting into the world of considering productized services
Okay.
as our
So,
way of being.
yeah, I can you explain I guess the product or the core product of Week of the Website and I guess like your promise to
Yeah.
customers.
So our core product at Week of the Website is essentially, we always like to say we're like, our service is a process and the product of our service is a website. Um, that's what you just get out of working together, but we don't consider that to be the thing. We consider the process to be the thing. And so what we do is, and our promise to the clients is that we're going to be highly transparent. You have access, you know what's happening as it's happening. It's highly communicative. It establishes trust off the bat. It helps people work more closely with us. And when we're able to gain a client's trust, we get the client's buy-in and then we get their creative input, which is something that wasn't really given a ton of air and space in the past in web design. And ultimately, like if the client wants the website the client wants, if they want something that is against what we would say as a suggestion, we'll be like, we're going to tell you X, Y, and Z as to why this maybe should be this way, and then you can choose. So folks end up feeling a lot more considered when you go through that process, and that's kind of why we did it. And so what we offer is expedited web services. Built in a really transparent way. So we walk people through a process where there's an initial phase of just onboarding. And all of that is done before we actually kick off the project. We assign a project manager to every project, which is integral to the process and adhering to the productized service of it all and not going beyond scope and keeping things within a lane. My whole ethos is I'm like, people really love lanes, especially when they're in a situation where it goes outside of what they're comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like going to bowl for the first time and putting up bumpers on the side and being like, wow, I can play, I can have fun. It takes a lot of the stress out. We're not asking our clients to come into our world and learn our language. We're actually meeting them where they are. And be it when they're like, our favorites is like, what's it called? That little scrolly thing that you can do, that little animation. Or like, just call it a little scrolly thing animation and we'll pick up what you're throwing down. We'll be
Yeah.
like, we think this is what you mean. You don't need to call it by its name. So we really just kind of want to, we like considering it, and this is a little bit catchphrasing, a little bit niche, for like the democratization of design.
Mm-hmm.
So we are putting it more into this sort of like teamwork makes the dream work. They've elected us to help them build the website, but we're really there to help create their vision, and make that a reality. And our goal is to also consult in the meantime in features and functions that will help empower their business to get even
Mm-hmm.
stronger. It's not just,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a billboard where you live online. It's a part of your business. It's sales, it's marketing, it's all of this stuff. It's really, really important. So we want to guide people that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's how we start. So we get a lot of information from the client ahead of time. We ask for, any sort of branding assets, copy, text for your website, all of that stuff up front. And our project managers will help guide folks in getting that done. And we ask for that up front because that is what dictates the entire design of the website.
Right.
People, it feels a little chicken and the egg. It's like, do I need the copy first? Do I need the design first? And we're like, well, we design around the text of the website. So we want that. And it's a good exercise for our clients because, we're able then to go through and say, well, maybe combine these sections or do something like that. So there's some
Mm-hmm.
prep work that gets everything all buttoned up so that when we do kick off for the actual week of our active engagement, we hit the ground running. And we do daily screen share calls with our clients, to sort of touch base, and we build very one step at a time. We also design and develop at the same time, which is not traditionally done. Usually you design
Mm-hmm.
and then develop. So it cuts a lot of the time down, which allows us to drive the price down for an agency built website, a little bit more because we can be a lot more efficient with our time. And yeah, I just like to, it's like a warm hug. It's like a, we're guiding you through the process. And it can be really overwhelming. We just
Yeah.
want people to take it one bite at a time. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We lead
Mm-hmm.
them through the process. And at the end of the week, you have a website.
Yeah.
Then folks are allowed to, sit with it for some time, before we make final changes and help them with launching their website and eventually get them off to the next stage, which after you build a website is more or less SEO and any sort of digital marketing that they may want to do down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's what makes us different. And what is lovely about what we do is that what I just described is our core product, our like bread and butter, but we actually have engagements that fall outside of that that allow us to tap into that same mentality of the process that we've tested time and time again and adapt it for scale.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally just like usually adding a week or two on, but we keep everything pretty constrained in these lanes. We keep things in containers so that we are
Mm-hmm.
allowed to like meet multiple checkpoints. So if we get a major e-commerce website, we might say, hey, this is going to take us like 8 weeks to finish, but each week we're going to have like a milestone that we're sort of hitting. So you feel the progress, you're moving, you're engaged, but that, an 8-week website on Shopify, if we were to build that, like that's seems like it's a long time, but most folks would take far longer to build on that platform.
Right.
Um, so that's our goal. And most people like they just want a website yesterday. And it's tough. It's tough. So we want to do it fast.
Yeah. Well, I think like having things I've experienced being in organizations when they redo a website, and even not even a very complex website, and it can be months in between touch points, and then you're kind of like, what's happening here? Are we making progress? Are we not making progress? So I really like that transparency. And then just that quick turnaround. I feel like that's that is proving that you have the experience of we've done this so many times. And I think that that process part, I think for people who are trying to maybe come up with a productized service, uh, that's the question I would have to you is, to this person thinking about it, like, what is your process? Maybe, how can you turn that into the actual thing that you're delivering is actually the process. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
It's an interesting concept. The whole idea of productized service. And
Mhm.
I think, maybe we were talking about this offline before we started, but it starts with just doing it, right? That we were talking about. Sorry, man. It starts with just doing it.
Mhm.
With productized services, it's starting doing the thing. So for us, it was building the websites, and I'll speak to kind of how we developed ours. And then talking a lot about what's working and what's not working. And the big things that we noticed where we're like, we cannot get people's attention. We're having a really like hard time keeping everyone engaged. This is dragging on and the scope is rising as time passes. That is going to happen. So when we were like, okay, let's bring it in, for me with websites, it was like, what's lacking here is structure. There's
Mm.
no structure or blueprint as to how this gets done. And when you're talking about a design service, you're working with creative folks. And as a fellow creative, I don't want to slam any of us, but project management is not our forte. It's just not what we do well. We are designers, and you want someone who is an expert in that because that's their skill. And so we looked at it from a lot of different ways. We're like, how could we make this work? How could we bring this timeline down? What timeline feels appropriate? And we landed on a week because we were starting to use a client archetype that was really familiar to us, which was hospitality. So we were taking into account the process, our clients, and then also the people of it all from our point of view. And that comes more into when we started scaling, but the way in which we hired really, really had a lot more to do with um, personality and leadership traits than it had to do with, as well as, first you had to have like 5 years of experience. Great. We got you there. Fine. Now we just want to screen you for, are you a good listener? Are you good at explaining things in a way that won't make someone feel put off?
Yeah.
Are you manic when you design, or are you really calm? Are you able to take feedback and not take it personally? These are all of the things that work super important to getting the process done, because the process when we were thinking about the service itself, which for us is our process or website, it was like, how do we manage all of these different personalities and ideas and all of these things in the room? And it really just, we wanted to bring it down to keep it as simple as possible, remove a lot of the clutter, make it really transparent, really communicative, get the client more engaged, and do it in a way that was not stressful, which was very relaxed and very like, there's nothing we can't figure out. It's not the end of the world. We always say there's like, there's no such thing as an emergency in web design. There
Yeah.
truly isn't.
Mhm.
Even if you're having hosting it, we're like, we'll figure it out. No big deal. And that's where we started to think about it. And when we got into the world of product side service, for that, what drew that home was a flat fee price of how we presented it to our clients. That's when we really said, this is a product. Our service is a product. Um, and as you know, because we work with you, we've had a lot of moments, over the last, we've been around for 10 years, where as our company changes, that structure has to adapt and change. And it is definitely challenging to scale these things when you are starting to play with some of these variables on their own. For example, the people of it all. First, it was Kelsey and I doing everything, and then we have to bring in third parties to execute on it. It took a long time for us to figure out. And I'm talking like a couple years, but we did. And it is amazing when you do figure out exactly like, here are the types of folks that need to come in and do this. And then it's just training everyone. And the hardest thing we have to train on when you're talking about a productized service is really scope creep. In our example,
Yeah.
we have to really communicate well with the client. And that is why the transparency and the communication thing comes so hard into what we're doing with a service. You have to be able to, when people are looking at a product like that online, they want to know what they're getting, they want to know what to expect. And that kind of translate into this creative design process as like kind of over communicating some things and expectations,
Mhm.
making sure everyone knows what we can and cannot get done in a week's time,
Right.
because we don't want it to go over, because that's when you start screwing yourself, so to speak. Is like, oh, we've got a project that's lasting 3 weeks instead of one, we're not making any extra money from this unless you have that conversation with a client. And we have had to put guardrails up along as we've grown and taken ourselves out of the doing of it a little bit more. And that is the difficulty of it. And it took us a long time to figure it out, but it's good. It's just a moving target. It will always be a moving target.
Yeah.
If the market changes, our client archetypes have changed over the years in a big way, especially as we've had to increase our margins and our prices. Like, you just have to keep readjusting these little core parts of what you're doing as they need. And you know when they're breaking. Like, I know when projects aren't going well, it's usually because of a communication breakdown. And what do
Yeah.
we need to address there? Projects are going over. Okay, scope creep. What do we need to do there? So
Yeah.
yeah, moving target.
Yeah, definitely. I I think that that's a good lesson because as the business develops and what you guys feel like you're getting really good at, you can clarify who is that customer too that really is the right fit for this product. So
Hmm.
it kind of gets into, who you need to be selling to. Um, but since you're doing these productized, you do a website and it's a project and it has a succinct timeline and then it's kind of over. I mean, there might be some support afterwards where you have some kind of retainer for a while, but hosting services or whatever it is, support services after. But I imagine that you've got to have a very consistent pipeline of incoming work in order to maintain that business model of this project because
Hmm.
you've always got new stuff coming in and stuff rolling off pretty quickly. So, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to make sure that your pipeline can be full for everything to keep the business growing?
Yeah. I will preface and disclaim this with I can't tell you how many times we've messed this up. So there is no perfect like answer for anyone. But what I will say is that it really, you're right. And when we started and we were looking at this, the first thing I told Kelsey is I was like, this is a volume-based business. This is gonna be hard. Because
Mm,
we didn't want to get deep into retaining contracts because our company ethos was building you websites you could manage yourself. Looks a little contradictory if you're like, by the way, we'll retain. Like, we know it's like, we know we're on this platform. We mean it. We think that you should be able to maintain this website yourself. So you're not going to need a lot of retaining and support services. Now, of course, we have people who do, but you're talking about a business that when we started was a lot of hustling and talking to people. And what was great was because we were already in a really good networking position with our original client archetype, which was like hospitality. We're talking about a little bit bigger than your like mom and pop stores. These are nice restaurants. We knew a lot of the best restaurateurs in Chicago, and we started there. Um, and we developed a process that we knew would work for them.
mhm,
And then we started to grow and realize that, all right, we've got all these referrals. This is really good, but we need more. And we started diversifying our industries and where we started to look for business. We got really good with real estate and lawyers for a while.
mm,
Um, these are like, especially with commercial real estate, but also with real estate agents. So top real estate agents. And we just started to realize we're like, who are the people who need a website that they need to manage themselves? Who are the people who want that autonomy, but they're not these bigger companies? We're
mhm.
talking about small biz. We're talking about business leaders in small biz. Who are those people? Well, top performing real estate agent is a really great example of someone who doesn't carry a lot of overhead, who just really needs a great online presence.
Yeah.
Lawyers, same thing. They're working with a lot of outdated software for billing and stuff like that. But a lot of law firms, younger ones popping up, they need to compete with these bigger ones. They need to look good. They need the SEO.
Mhm.
So with that, when we started to grow, we had this incredible referral network. So because it's volume based, what's great is that you're getting, if you are smart and you do your job well, and we weren't
Yes.
even coaching people, like I won't even say we had the time to follow up with people. I would love, in a perfect world, we were following up with people regularly, right? That's not what was happening. we were just too busy. And so we just kept getting work coming in, and it was great. If we did a good job during our project, that was enough for us to get the referral down the line.
Yeah.
Um, I would go back and do it differently now, but hindsight's 2020. We just started getting referrals from all of our past clients, and we were just primarily referral based. That was the benefit of doing a really good job at volume
Yeah.
based business. Then from there, you will always plateau because we were working so far. We exhausted our industry. We started looking at it and we're like, this isn't really clicking. We weren't clicking as much with hospitality anymore. And we started to realize that we were kind of growing. And not only that, we needed to raise our prices
Yeah.
because in order for Kelsey and I to get out of the work, we needed to bring in that labor cost. Well, now we're going to have to raise our prices. Um, so we start pricing ourselves out of stuff. And then you start looking at, you know, we don't know. My whole thing is I'm like, we're not too expensive. We're just not talking to the right people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because most people were telling us you are too inexpensive for bigger clients to take you seriously, which is a really hard ship to turn around. And we're still like turning it around. We're
Yeah.
like almost 100% there, but it becomes a question of positioning and a question of like really, really talking to your clients at this point. And so now I'm kind of jumping ahead to where we are now. And every good old school salesperson will talk to you about find your multipliers. We needed to, at this point where we have our referrals, we have a lead gen platform that we're on that takes a large chunk of your margin. So when we're already operating on slim margins, it's not our favorite tool. Also, the clients that are coming to us, 9 times out of 10, I think we pull the numbers. We had said no to like 10,000 projects over time. Like we were like, we just know we start to understand at this point, we know what clients work well for us. We have to do a fair amount of screening too. Our
Mhm.
process is not for everyone. And so if we get on a sales call with someone and they're panicked and they're asking a lot of questions, we're like, we're going to hook you up with someone else. This is not going to be for you. We don't want a bad experience. That is how we also control the outcome is we don't build websites for everyone. We just know who are the best fits for us.
Yeah.
So now we're this older, wiser company, and we're thinking about how do we create our own pipeline? Well, obviously, strategic partnerships are a really great way for us to do that because we offer a very siloed creative service and a broader spectrum of marketing services, being
Yeah.
web design. And we noticed that a lot of our best clients coming to us were female founded creative agencies that were specializing in marketing strategy and brand design. And if you were one of those two things, you inherently understood the value of what we did, being able to communicate a deadline to your clients as our partner, saying they're going to get it done in a week. I've heard that be like that is one of the most invaluable things for them versus a project dragging on, like we were talking about, where it's like they drag on, they get really expensive. You don't know who you're talking to, who's doing what. So our agency partners really love the clear transparency in the process of it all and the ability to roll it up underneath their services. Plus, they're coming to us with the strategy and the branding so that the work
Yes.
looks so much better.
Yeah.
So it is like a partnership made for dreams. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of going out and finding those people. And the way I started to look at it was great local, we've got our local people, and then you just use the multiplier method. You talk to you when you have the really good established relationship with that person in that agency after a couple, like I'm saying, I didn't ask this question of anyone outside of people that I'd known for a little bit. And even then I'll kind of ask it earlier and earlier on, but it's like, who else can you introduce me to? Right. Because we're not really offering much of a reciprocity when it comes to our partnerships. It's
Yeah.
really just like we're here to enhance each other's business. You either get that or you don't. And that's okay if you're like, no, I want a kickback. We just don't have the margins to be able to apply a lot of that stuff
Mhm.
because we employ a lot of US based expensive developers, right? We don't outsource anything. And that was one of the first things that people told us to do is like outsource labor. And we were like, we won't to anyone that isn't within our realm of developers because in order to get it done in a week, we need you to be able to do 10 times the amount of work in less time. We need you to be able to look at something and execute it like that.
Yeah.
So that's when we started working in two realms where we started to say, all right, we need to scale up even more into enterprise level projects where we're adapting our process even more for even larger scale projects or bulk replatforming, which is when we're talking about my favorite thing is to say, like, you think of a franchise model, you've got a parent company with all these little babies out there, and all the little babies are little independents, and they all want to be on the same host. Well, you might be on WordPress right now, but you're not having a really great CMS experience there. Bring them over to Squarespace. And that's what we did for YWCA. We did the national website, and then we're replatforming 60 of their websites in 4 months on
Yeah.
Squarespace fast. So like we can scale our process to make it more efficient and more cost effective, inevitably, than it would be to do something as daunting as a bulk website replatforming from one place like WordPress to another place like Squarespace.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes relationship management. Like I now look at the program as the program grows and partnerships. It's really about coaching each other. And so I will do regular check-in calls and be like, what are you seeing in the industry? What are you hearing from your clients? How are you experiencing our process? How can we get better? But also, like, what's the market like for you? How can we co sell? And then also, how can I teach you how to best work with us? And how can I have these check ins where I am, for new pro partners, I'm educating them on the kind of clients we like. And
Yeah.
so for example, I had a conversation the other day and I was like, that's not our client. We're not going to take on that type of work. And I explained why. And I was like, and they were like, I don't know if we want that work. I was like, exactly. I was like, it may seem like there's money, but the security hoops you're going to have to jump through are going to be a nightmare. And I'm like, that's not what we do. We're like, we're efficient. We're not built for that. There's plenty of other agencies
Right.
out there. We just have our niche.
Yeah. I love that. I think the strategic partnership piece of it is it, it probably takes time to develop those partnerships and whatnot, but that that can be that continuing, they can be kind of doing some of that sales work for you. If
Yeah.
you maintain that relationship. So if you have enough of those, that can really like help fill the pipeline. And but what I like about what you guys are doing is that it's not a like one source approach. You've got multiple irons in the fire at all times, and I think that that is incredibly important if you're trying to fill a pipeline where you have like quick turnaround all the time. So I really admire what you guys are doing on the sales side of things. I will say that.
Thank you. Yeah, we
um,
were like, we need to diversify. We need to
yeah,
get our monthly recurring revenues up, and we're working on it. Like
yeah,
we're developing that stuff for like how can we make it make sense for our company ethos, our types of clients, where it's like now we're getting into the point where our positioning consultant is like, yeah, people can manage their own websites, absolutely, and people will say that they'll want it. These agencies will want it, but do they want to do it? Is
no,
the
most
question,
of
and
the
the answer
time,
is
no.
no. And that's when they're like, they just look at us, we're like, I can't tell you how many partners that are said, I know you guys don't really do retaining services. We're like, oh no, we'll do it for you. We'll do it for you. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
Well, it's nice when it's like you give somebody the option. The choice is in their hands. It's like, hey, do you want to do it yourself? Absolutely, you can. Here's the tools to be able to do so. But as small business owners or just businesses, we're like, no, let's put that in the hands of the expert. Let's outsource it. It makes more money. It makes more sense to pay you guys a couple $100 a month to be that expert rather than maybe a small business owner trying to figure out like how to do
Yeah.
website updates or whatever it is. So, and
Yeah.
even like
We have
keeping
an
up with the
agent.
times, like, it's just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. We have someone right now who I was talking to yesterday where they were like, yeah, we just have these like ongoing things that we need to update. And I just like, I can build a page, but like, can't really anymore. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense because websites are not static things. You should be changing them pretty often. And if you're manage that on behalf of your client, just pass off the work to us. We'll do it. Like, no big deal.
Yeah.
And that's where you forge. And now we're getting into a place where some of our longer standing partnerships, we co-sell. And
Yeah.
it's great. It's like, where can we go? We strategize together. We were talking about what conferences can we go to? How
Yeah.
can we host our own stuff in different cities together? And it really is just like, it is the fastest, surefire way to grow your pipeline and your business if you're willing to put in the effort and really listen and care about the other people's business. I mean, I spend a significant amount of my time talking to folks like this to say, but at the same time, the information I'm able to get out of it, like I have a much better understanding of the market as a whole and what's coming down. And so we can make better adjustments. Like I'm hearing a lot of people coming in and wanting to, and like being a lot more conservative with how much money they're going to spend in small biz. I totally understand that. So we need to be able to adjust to some of those things and also wanting to offer an equitable starting price point for some of our services. And so we're considering stuff like that. And that's just because we're able to have these conversations with people who are all over the US. We're like, this is what I'm seeing. I'm like, it's all over the place. Okay, well, I don't want to say the dirty word recession, but I'm like, I think that there's definitely something happening in the tech world. And Kelsey and I have to what you said, like having multiple irons in the fire. That's how we safeguard ourselves when we are entering times of uncertainty is we will
Mhm.
start to throw multiple irons in the fire and see if core business is like kind of just sitting there and doing its thing but it's not really growing, where is the other business, because those entry level price point people become clients later on in the bigger world when they need their second bigger website.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Good. Um, Gosh, we barely got to my questions, but I mean, I love it because like I think that's what naturally happens when we are, I think that what you have done with the Productized service is fascinating. Thank you for sharing and being really transparent on that because I know
oh yeah.
that that is years of toil to, figure it out and iterate and try. And, you've given us a lot of really good information here and insights into that process. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
no, I always say, I'm like, whenever I do speaking engagements, whenever I talk to people, like, there are no secrets. Ask me how
Yeah.
much I get paid. I don't care. Like, I look at people and I'm like, no, we need to talk about this stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not giving business away to you. Trust me, I'm savvy, I'm smart. I know when someone's trying to take advantage of me, but for the most part, it's like information should be free. You
Yeah.
learn this stuff, but it's the doing.
Yeah.
It's the doing of it. That's what shows what you're made of. So, I can
Yeah.
tell you how to do something all day, but you got to sit down and do it. That's the hard
Yeah.
part.
Exactly. And you guys are doing it. I think that, the fact that like referrals keep coming in, you guys do the product, the quality of your product keeps proving itself. Like, and that, that does not happen overnight. So
Right. Right.
congratulations
I
on
know.
that. Really.
We forget how much that didn't happen overnight because we
Yeah.
can only see immediately in front of us. But yeah.
I love it.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
I have one last question for you. Before I ask it, I'll make sure to point people to your website. People can go check it out. Week of the website, all one word.com, week of the website. And people can go and check that out. You have some examples of some of the websites that you've done over there. It's
Hmm.
quite a beautiful website, so people can check it out. The last question I have for you is do you have a favorite business book that has made an impact on you?
Yeah. Um, it's funny, we were just talking about positioning, but I am fascinated by positioning and sales and marketing and how all of these things form the cornerstone for you to make choices. So, speaking to lanes and containers, I'm really big on that. So, I actually have it right here because I'm laughing because I'm building this right now. But April Dunford, her books,
It's called
she's an out.
Sales
This
Pitch.
is called Sales Pitch. This book
Okay.
is called Sales Pitch. She's got another book that I think that is called Obviously Awesome.
Hmm.
And it's all about how you position yourself within your marketplace and takes you through a step-by-step process to figure out your position in the market. Because like we were just talking about, it's understanding your client archetype, what they care about, what they value, and aligning yourself with that. Like when we said, it's not that we're overpriced, it's that we're not talking to the right people. It's not that
Yeah.
our process isn't interesting, it's that we're probably not talking to the right people who think that we're valuable. And that is what April talks about. She has done a lot of work in the tech industry, which is why it's near and dear to my heart. But her work is incredible. And this is an excellent, excellent sales guide for folks who are really looking to dial in their pitches and how
Mhm.
they sell.
Mhm. I love it. That's good. I need that myself.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
I think I read this book like 3 times before I understood it. So if someone reads it, it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
what? Like, don't feel bad. spoken really simply, but you're like, okay. And then when you're thinking about it in relation to your work, you're like, it's a thinker, but it's short. It's a quick read.
Yeah. Okay. Great to know. Well, Mallory, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, and besides going to the website, is there any other way or any other place you'd like to point them to?
Oh, yeah. If anyone wants to talk to me about partnerships or websites in general, just email me at Mallory, Mallory, at weekofthewebsite.com. And I am happy to either help you myself or direct you to the person at the company who can. So
Awesome. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for being
thank
on
you.
Financial
This is
Clarity.
great.
I really appreciate all
Loved
of
it.
the time and insights.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.